All right. So we're going to visit with Bonnie today. We're going to do a session. Bonnie's dealing with macular degeneration, and as I've discovered with conversations with her before this session started, there's a lot of emotional issues behind it. Okay, so I'm going to add Bonnie here. Say hello, Bonnie.
Hello.
Okay.
I'm here.
All right, good. Okay, so we were talking before, Bonnie, and you have gone through loads of therapy in the past, EMDR, and a whole long list of other things. I mean, talk about that a little bit on your various, not necessarily your vision, but the traumatic issues in childhood.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about where you've been so far.
Well, I guess I started trying to heal myself after I got sober. I know I started then. And that was some 40 some years ago now. I started seeing a therapist in San Diego, which is where I was living, and continued throughout the next 40 years. I have been doing one form of therapy or another. And that was an indication to me on how much emotion can really mess up your body. And I had never thought about it in terms of my eyes until recently. And then when I began doing the work this last week with the unseen therapist, my vision deteriorated again. It just became much worse.
Yeah, we were talking about that before we started this recording and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen that before, and it isn't that unseen therapist causes that. Rather, it's actually good news in that you're seeing that as you start getting into your very intense traumatic memories that are not resolved yet, despite all the therapy you've done, as you start to get in them, the emotional intensity starts to affect your eyesight. I have that right?
Yes, that's exactly right.
So you read my book, The Unseen Therapist. You have not dealt with any of our advanced materials, taking our advanced courses or anything. You've just started with the book. The book has at the end of it. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I have taken classes in EFT, but that was several years ago, like 20 years ago. And I've used it off and on, but not exclusively, obviously. And
Okay.
I just read the whole Unseen Therapist again. Yeah.
All right, good. All right. That has in it a personal peace procedure, which is sort of a beginner's look at how to do this. The actual courses we do and so on get into more advanced stuff. Okay. Right. And so you have very challenging issues. I asked you, although I don't know the details before this recording, about where they may have come from, and you told me, as I suspicioned, they came from a abusive, traumatic childhood. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. In general terms, for now, the abuses involved, were they verbal, physical, sexual, all three? What?
Verbal and physical. No sexual abuse in my childhood. No.
Okay. And did it come from parents, siblings, neighbors, someplace else?
It came from my parents and my siblings. Actually, it was my mother. I realized this. In fact, she even told me when I was 31 that she never wanted me.
Okay.
She never wanted me, and she showed it all throughout my childhood. I was treated differently from my siblings, and I was very aware of that. But I attributed it to my wrongdoing, of course. That there was something wrong with me, that she treated me the way she treated me. But her favorite way was to make me invisible. And whenever Mama disciplined me like that, just ignore me. I mean, I just became invisible to her. Then I became invisible to everybody in the family. I could sit at the table with them and say, please pass the potatoes, and nobody heard me because I wasn't there. And everybody treated me the same way that Mama treated me.
Okay.
And when Mama was there talking to me again, then the others would talk to me. So that was her favorite way of coping with me.
Are you the first child, middle child, last child?
Number 6 out of 8.
Okay.
5th daughter.
Okay.
Last daughter.
All right. Well, when you grow up, this is my view, but you have to always correct me because I know very little about you. I'm going to take what you've told me and I'm going to put it together and open some doors and this kind of thing, because we're going to do a session to get you started on all of this. Okay.
Okay.
But it isn't, from our approach, it isn't really what happened. That is, your mother abused you, ignored you, your family ignored you, you were invisible, that kind of thing. It isn't what happened that's the important thing. It may seem that way, but that's not the real important thing. The really important thing is your response to it. What does that mean to you? See, we can't change what happened. We can't change what mother said or didn't say or whatever as time went on. When she tells you at age 31 she didn't want you and this kind of thing. We're not going to be able to change that. What we can do, and do it elegantly, although it may take some time, we're going to get started on this, is to change your response to it. So you're free of it. Oh, well, it's a nice academic statement, Bonnie. Like,
Right.
oh, well, that's just her view. I mean, that's a nice academic statement. And we could say that we could agree on that, but emotionally, you see, it embeds differently.
Right.
So let me ask you, I mean, we've been talking about your emotional responses and we'll get into those more as this progresses. But logically, is there something wrong with you?
No.
I mean, well,
other than the fact that I'm having problems with my eyes, yes.
Okay. Well, we all have issues in this world, okay?
Yeah.
But is there anything particularly abnormally wrong with you? Okay.
No. In fact, I think I've coped very, very well throughout my life.
Yeah. Okay. But the emotional response is different because you'll get into your issues, as you told me before we recorded, and you're in tears instantly. In fact, you wrote me an email about that, okay?
Yes.
Which means despite all the work you've done on it, they're not really resolved. At least that's the way I see it.
That's right. That's the way I feel. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So one of the things that's important here when we deal with the unseen therapist in the spiritual realm is that, and a lot of people don't really realize this, but the unseen therapist, God, Jesus, Buddha, Allah, or whatever higher power or whatever name you want to give to it, isn't going to sit around and change your beliefs for you. They're not going to say, oh, Bonnie, that belief you have there, well, you can't have that. It's not good for you. You got to have this belief. Not going to do that. Not going to do that. That is an unloving thing to do. That is actually the thought police. Okay.
Right.
So you may have a lot of beliefs that got embedded from your mother, siblings, etc., that are still kicking around. An unseen therapist is not going to come and say, oh, we'll take care of this belief, but not that one. No. Not going to do that. What we're going to do, you and I are going to do, is we are going to work for a little while before we ever bring in unseen therapists.
Okay.
And we're going to put some stuff on the table. We're going to talk about some stuff. We're going to, in psycho speak terms, we're going to do some reframing is what's involved. We're going to start to look at it maybe through different eyeglasses, look at it a little different way than maybe you've seen it before, and so on. We want to put a lot of this on the table. Then when we finally bring an unseen therapist, there'll be more there, and we'll see how well we do, okay? So you were in our conversation, Bonnie, you were zeroing in on your mother and your siblings. I didn't hear your father in there anywhere. Was he a player in all this?
Yes, but in a different way. He was the threat that mother kept, hanging over us like a Damocles sword. He was the punisher. But actually, I really related to my father. My father was fair. He never treated me differently than he treated the rest of them. And I was very aware of that. My mother was the one who treated me differently.
Okay. Well, while Father may have some important input here, this is a get started session, so we're going to get started. We're going to get a good start, and we're going to deal with your mother unless you tell me otherwise.
Okay.
Does that seem right?
All right. That seems right.
Okay. Now, remember, it's not your mother. It is your response to your mother. The response being, if I get that right, I'm not wanted. There's something wrong with me. I don't count. And let me back up a second here. There's an important foundation in all of this. When a young child, and correct me if you think I'm wrong on this in your case, okay? When a young child is given the message by a parent that there's something wrong with you, you're not lovable, I don't want you, you don't count, etc., etc., the child tends to believe it because this comes from an authority and a love source. This is correct in your case?
Yes.
Okay. All right, good. What happens, and I'm going to just speak technically for a minute. There's young Bonnie with all these beliefs about herself, which are not logically true, by the way, as we've discussed, okay? But they are emotionally true. And what happens then is that any doctor will tell you this. I mean, I can't tell you how many doctors I've asked about this, and they all agree with it. That is, when you're having negative emotions, something's wrong with me, I'm angry about this, I'm humiliated about this, I'm fearful about this, and so on. When you have those things, your system creates a cascade of negative chemistry in your body. Your adrenaline goes out of balance. Your cortisol goes out of balance. Hundreds of repair mechanisms and chemical equations go out of balance. Okay. And your immune system has to now take care of that. If it didn't, you'd be in big trouble. Okay. But there's only so much of the immune system, and it can only do that for so long. And after a while, physical things start to show up, like macular degeneration, vision problems, and other diseases and things that people get. It includes cancer. It includes every one of the thousands of diseases that medicine has put labels on.
My heart problems began about the same time as my macular degeneration.
Okay.
I have a pacemaker now. Yeah.
Okay. We see it over and over and over again. Unresolved emotional issues show up physically eventually. Okay. So what we want to do is start taking care of those unresolved emotional issues, and we're going to start with mother. All right. So I want to get as much on the table as we can to begin with here. Okay. So let me ask you about I don't know your mother, but I've had many, many, many conversations with people who have mothers who are seemingly similar to yours. Critical, doesn't want their child, maybe. Lots of different issues they have on their own. Let me ask you, would I be correct in assuming that one of your mother's greatest needs would be love?
My mother's greatest needs? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Would I also be accurate in assuming that her need to be critical, her need to respond to you in the way that she did in all these abusive ways would be because she has unrest within herself and doesn't really know what to do with it?
Yes, a lot of unrest. I think the woman was terribly stressed all of the life. I mean, she worked so hard. She grew up on a farm. I mean, she worked really hard all the time, and she had 8 kids, for Christ's sake,
Yeah.
She had a lot to overwhelm her. Yeah.
Well, I'm bringing that up because one of the things, if we're going to collapse this well, is we have to put on the table and recognize that the source of these traumatic issues that you have, being your mother, isn't that something's really wrong with you. Rather, mother has her own unrest from her own upbringing, her own abuses, and so on, and doesn't really know how to handle it. I see this so often. And so rather than work inside or look at what's going on in here, what she and many others do, your mother would not be alone in this, is they tend to project it out. It's like it's unrest here. I got to blame something out there, the outside world. Oh, how about Bonnie? Okay. And you happen to be the target.
Mm-hmm.
But the real issue is nothing is wrong with you. It is your mother's inability to handle her own issues. Now, I don't want to impose stuff on you. Am I on target?
Yes, you are. They were on the verge of losing the farm when she found out she was pregnant with me.
Oh.
It was a very hard, traumatic time for them, and she did not want another baby. No way.
Yeah.
So
would it be your view that all during the pregnancy, your mother was going at some level, I don't want this child, I don't want this child, I don't want this child?
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Well, that's it. Okay, good. We got to put that on the table because one thing we know from medical science is they've been able to put sensors on mother's pregnant belly, and they know that the fetus, the embryo, you inside there, pick up mother's stuff. If she's arguing with somebody, you pick it up. If she doesn't want you, you pick it up. Are you with me?
Yeah. I absolutely. I had a regression session with a hypnotist that I really trusted, and he took me back to the womb, and I actually heard my parents arguing over. She wanted to get an abortion, and my father wouldn't agree to it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So again, and we're speaking academically now, we want to get to a point where it's not just academic, you really get this, and Unseen Therapist is going to help us do that, okay? You have nothing to do with this. You are the result of a happy erotic moment or two, and that's only, and you didn't even have anything to do with that, right?
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, it's true. I'm glad you're laughing because that means my little reframe.
Well, I was just thinking, when I went to a very small school, 25 kids in my graduating high school class, and there were 4 of us that had the same birthday. And at our 25th reunion, one of them came up to me and greeted me as his birthday buddy, and he says, "We both know how our parents celebrated New Year's Eve, don't we?"
Well, okay. Yeah. But the important thing for this conversation is that you have nothing to do with that. Okay?
Right.
And your mother not wanting you because of all the pressures of the farm and all financial pressures and whatever else is going on in her life, her own hard life, her own inability to not resolve things and kicking around in there and so on. You have nothing to do with that, but you end up being the target.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to switch from there to specific events, which you read about in the book, The Unseen Therapist, correct?
Yes.
In the book, I describe at some length the idea of specific events. Specific events are the things that actually happen in your life. They have emotional crescendos in them. They are underneath, how you respond in current time. We want to go back to those specific events and unload them. That's the point. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have go ahead.
I started that list. I've got, quite a number of them written down, but I can't think of anyone where I specifically thought, who do you think you are?
Okay. Well, that's just one I picked up from something that you said. Okay. But do you have that list handy, by the way?
Right here.
All right. Pick one out of that list and let you and I work on it.
Well, actually, it was the very first one that I worked on, but I got some results from that. And that was my very first memory, actually. It's the very first memory I had. I was still in the crib. And my parents were right next door. I was in a crib in their bedroom. There's a transom, an open space in the wall between the bedroom and the dining room where they were with some friends had come over. And they were visiting and having a good time and laughing. And I had a younger brother already. And my mother had come and taken him out of his crib because I knew she was feeding him. She was nursing him. And I wanted to be with all of those people. I didn't want to be in my crib. And I started crying. I wanted to be taken up, taken out. And nobody came. And I just cried and cried and cried and cried until finally somebody came in there. I don't remember who it was. I think probably my father. But somebody picked me up in the crib and pulled my diaper down and just wailed the bejesus out of me, spanked me so hard. And then told me to shut up and go to sleep and tossed me back down in the crib. And I remember lying there just crying and crying and crying and crying until I fell asleep. And all I remember about that is the feeling of it doesn't matter how much you cry. They're never going to pick you up. They're never going to pick you up.
Right. Now,
that feeling, what?
Go ahead.
That stayed with me all my entire life, actually. I've found it very difficult to cry when hurt physically or emotionally. I immediately would shove the tears down. I would not. That was just a way of getting more abuse if I cried.
Okay.
And so that was something I've done all my life. Yeah.
All right. Now I want to feed something back to you, and you need to instruct me on this. You were telling me before we ever had this recording, in an email and otherwise, you would go through some of these events, and you would be in tears instantly, big time tears. Okay. Now, I just asked you about this one event, but it's an event you worked on with unseen therapists, and you just said it like it was a walk around the park.
Yeah.
Were you getting intense about it as you said it, or was it that's just what happened?
No, that was the interesting thing. That one time, the very first time I worked with the unseen therapist, I had an emotional response before. When I wrote it down, my emotional response was 10. I was very aware of that. And I was also aware I talked about that particular incident with therapists innumerably, over the 40 years. But I still had that emotional response to it. And after I went through the video with your video, and I did the whole thing, closed my eyes and called in the therapist, and the response was 0. I couldn't get over it. Just that one time.
Okay.
I didn't have that emotional response.
All right. Fabulous. We're going to go a little bit further, but I want to cover something with you first, if I may.
Okay.
If I understand your story correctly, you didn't have just one or two specific events. You had maybe hundreds, maybe 1,000 or something. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And so one of the conclusions people tend to make is, oh my God, I got to go through this for hundreds of events or 1,000. Oh, God.
Exactly.
There's not enough time in 4 lifetimes to do that. Okay.
That's right. That's what I kept thinking. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I got some good news for you. Okay.
Go ahead.
Within our process, there is something built in that is called the generalization effect. What that means is this: while you may have hundreds or multitudes of these specific events, many of them are grouped like mother events, things mother did, said, etc. whatever. Okay. Siblings would be another one. And school might be another one, or things like that. Okay.
Okay.
You told me at another point you had a marriage issue. Okay. That would be another one. All right. So the good news is, while there may be hundreds in each of those little groups, let's just take mother, for example, you only need to do 5, 10, 15, maybe 20, and do them well and do them thoroughly to completely collapse mother issues, if you will. Because
that is a wonderful thing to hear.
Well,
it's a wonderful thing.
Well, listen to the logic of it for a minute. Those specific events have commonalities in them. Similar people like your mother, similar tones of voice, similar topics, similar responses by you, similar. And so after you do 5, 10, 15, 20 really well, it generalizes. Let me say it a little differently. We have a metaphor that I call the tabletop and table legs. Let me give it to you. Here's a tabletop, okay? A tabletop is supported by a lot of table legs. Okay? If you remove the table legs, tabletop falls, okay? Now,
right.
A tabletop, from our getting to our approach for the moment, a tabletop might be my mother's abusive ways, okay? We could call that a tabletop, all right? And it is supported by all these table legs, all these specific events in your life, okay? Where mother said this, did that, whatever.
Okay.
Okay, all of these, okay? And there are hundreds of them, okay?
Right.
But if we do 5, 10, 15, 20 of them well, your video just cut off. I hope you're going to come back. Tabletop, table legs.
Told me about the tabletop and all the specific events, which were the legs. That was the last part I heard.
Okay. And one of those table legs was this one you were talking about in the crib. That's a table leg under the tabletop.
Okay.
Okay. A table leg under all your anxiety. It's a contributor to your eyesight. Okay. It's a contributor, one table leg. All right. So you dealt with one table leg and you dealt with it well. Instead of being a 10 and in tears, you talked about it like it was a shopping trip. So anyway, you dealt on your own with one specific event. Okay. And you had success at that. Okay. Let's you and I take another specific event. And we'll deal with that one as well, and to get you started, okay? So tell me another specific event that is bothersome to you.
Well, my sister, who was the sister next to me in age, she was 4 years older, just hated me. The one I worked on was, and I just started, I couldn't finish it. I couldn't finish it. Was when she hit me with a broom once when I was like 8 and she was like 12. She picked up a broom in the barn and whacked me. It just swung that stick as hard as she could and hit me in the kidney. Oh my God, did that hurt. And I pulled it away from her. I grabbed it and I pulled it away. And then I had the broom and I could hit her. And I could not bring myself to do it because I knew how much it hurt. And she just sat there, she stood there and laughed at me, just laughed at me and then ran away. And all I could think of was that she just hated me. She just hated me. It was like, just wasn't anything I could do about it. I mean, there wasn't anything I could do about it. She just hated me. And I didn't know why. She just hated me.
So I'm hearing the tears, but I want to put an emotion around that. I'm not hearing necessarily anger. What I'm hearing is, but you tell me if I'm on target or not. I'm hearing powerless.
Yes, absolutely powerless. Yes.
Okay.
No way to ever get away from that.
All right. As you were telling that story on a scale of 0 to 10, what number would you give that intensity? You were starting to cry, but were you at a 10 or?
No, about an 8, I'd say. Yeah.
Okay. So if I get it correctly, she's hitting you with the broom.
One huge whack. I mean, just
Okay.
oh God.
Okay. Now, remember what we're looking for here is not what happens so much as your response to it. That's what's important.
Yeah.
Okay. Because we're not going to change the fact that she hit you with a broom.
No.
Okay. So is that the crescendo moment? She's hitting you and you're feeling powerless? Or did it come later when you had the broom and you were going to hit her?
It was actually when I had the broom. And I realized that, well, one, I couldn't hit her because it would hurt her so much. I knew how much it would hurt. And I couldn't do that. And I knew she'd do it to me again in an instant. She'd do it again in an instant. Didn't bother her.
All right. Got it. Let's do an unseen therapist session on that specific event. All
Okay.
right? Okay. And by the way, I'm picking up your estimation of an 8 might be a little low. I don't want to impose it on you, but seems to me if you really got into it, you could get it to a 10. Would I be correct?
It's possible. Let me turn off my radio.
Okay. So this may be a little shorter, but let's go give it a try. Okay. So if you would close the eyes. We've already invited unseen therapists. We don't need to go through the invitation process. Okay. She's here. She's listening. She's heard the whole thing. She understands more about it than you and I ever will. Mm-hmm. And so what we're going to do is represent. We're going to represent your emotional response to this powerless feeling in there. What can I do? If I don't want to hit her because it'll hurt, but she hits me and I'm powerless and she'll do it again. All that is power. We're going to call that powerless. And we're going to represent that metaphorically, Bonnie, as a unwanted vibration around your heart. Ta-ta, 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 ta-ta. Now, you don't have to actually create a vibration around your heart. We're just going to imagine it that way, okay? And that represents all this powerless emotion. Unseen therapist understands all of this. And she looks and knows you don't need to still carry that around as an adult, which is what you're doing. It's costing you, okay? It's a yesterday event. That, again, is your sister's unrest within her, right? Just like your mother's unrest within your mother. Right? Similar kind of thing. And so she sends in your imagination, a nice, gentle, healing, cooling breeze coming from her towards you, enters your body, surrounds your heart. And that unwanted vibration just can't survive. That powerless feeling cannot survive in the ultimate love, the ultimate healing love of the unseen therapist. And so in your imagination, the unwanted vibration in the heart goes ta-ta, 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 ta-ta. And we're going to do that again. Represent the powerless feeling as this unwanted vibration around your heart and your imagination. Ta-ta, ta-ta, ta-ta. Here comes the cooling, healing, loving breeze. Ta-ta, 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 ta-ta. And do that again now, Bonnie, and take whatever time you want to repeat that. Ta-ta, 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 ta-ta. And just keep repeating it until you've gone as far as you can go, however far that may be. Again, no grades. You don't have to get an A or a C or just whatever happens. And when you're done, whenever you've gone as far as you think you can go, just open your eyes and we'll talk.
Okay.
All right. Oh, okay. So when you were doing that, were you having any competing thoughts or other thoughts come up or
No, what I was seeing was what had happened at that time, which was after she stood there and laughed at me, she ran away and hid. That's what she would do. She would run away and hide so I couldn't find her. But I was just watching her this time. I wasn't feeling anything, you know.
You were watching her
run away. Yeah.
Well, don't let me impose thoughts. But I want to ask you, were you watching her sort of objectively, no longer involved in it?
Yes. I didn't have that sense of loss and powerlessness.
Well, all right, do this. I'm a great one for testing, okay? Because I never want to be fooled by what could be a temporary result. Okay, that's not professional work. So, if you would, we're going to test. Close your eyes for me. Go back to that event. There she is with the broom hitting you, and you're going to hit her back, but you can't. You feel powerless, and run that movie with some vividness in it, and tell me what happens.
It's really it really doesn't have any feeling much anymore. It's like just she just ran away, and that's okay. So I'll do something else.
All right. Now, chances are, this is my experience speaking, chances are that particular specific event, we're pretty much done with it. That table leg under your tabletop, probably not going to be a problem anymore. That contributor but there's more contributors, okay?
Right.
But that table leg under your tabletop, probably not going to bother you. But this is important, really important. Tomorrow morning when you wake up, run that movie again. You want to test it again. You don't want to be fooled by a temporary result, okay? A lot of people who do EFT out there think they get a quickie result, and it's not always that way. So if you get some intensity tomorrow, what is really important is you recognize where that intensity is coming from. Chances are it is not coming from the powerless feeling. It may be coming from anger at something within that. It may be coming from, maybe you shifted an emotion to guilt. I'm making this up. But other, we call them aspects. Other aspects show up at another time. But we didn't put anger or guilt on the table with unseen therapists, did we?
No. And actually what I was thinking was I didn't feel a sense of loss, and that I didn't mention to begin with. But that's what I felt about my sister when I realized that I didn't feel that loss. That was what I always wanted, was a relationship with her. Yeah. And it was a loss that I never had that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. Now a larger picture here, Bonnie, is you may never have it. Is she still living?
Yeah, she's okay. She's still my bête noire.
Well, okay, but it's an important piece. You still may never have this relationship that you want with her. It could be because that relies on her resolving her own issues.
Right.
And you don't have much control over that.
No, none at all. I know.
Okay. Yep. So what we want to try to get to, and this is where the real freedom comes in, and this is all very possible, Bonnie. The real freedom comes in from getting the idea that the ultimate love isn't something you try to get from out there. You don't try to get it from your mother or the world outside, or a lover or your sister or anything else. We tend to do that as humans here in the separated world. We try to get it from out there somehow. And of course, everybody else is trying to get it from you as well. Okay. Very true statement, by the way. When we start to recognize that ultimately that love is within. Now that's an nice academic statement. You know, it rings well and all that, but we want to actually own that idea rather than isn't that a nice academic thing to say? When you own that idea, now you're free. Your sister can be whoever she's going to be. You can still love her. You can accept her. You can understand her. You can forgive and all of that. It's you that gets the freedom. When you don't have the freedom, and believe me, everybody running around without freedom, okay, one way, shape, or form. Me too. I'm still working on all this myself for myself. But the more freedom you get, the less cause there is for heart issues, macular degeneration, and other physical things. Okay. Now, we've just begun with that, but you did one of these things on your own, the crib thing.
Mm-hmm.
You and I did one, and you ended up laughing about it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and I will tell you what we've spent the last, whatever it is, hour or something doing this. That's the equivalent of 6 months, a year more of conventional therapy. In fact, in your experience, conventional therapy hasn't done it.
That's right. That's right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there you go, my dear. Do you have any more questions? Because this is a start for you. And now you've got the book to go back to, and you can get advanced training if you want to. All that's up to you. Okay. But we got you started down the road.
Oh, I'm so grateful. I am so grateful. Thank you so much. I'm going to continue with what I've been doing the list. I will continue with that. I want to know if I can skip around chronologically throughout my life in the list.
Yes, but there's one thing you want to remember. It's pretty important. And that is the farther back you go in time, that is the earlier in childhood, the more foundational it's likely to be.
Okay.
Now there's a segment. This is our advanced training if you ever want to go there, but there's a segment about having to deal with things in the womb. And from what you and I talked about, there may be issues in the womb. That would be very foundational. Okay.
Yeah.
And that might be worth doing as well. Okay. So yeah, skip around if you want to chronologically, but always remember the further back in time, the more foundational.
Okay.
If you start with something at age 36, for example, because somebody did something and you didn't, whatever it was, okay, or your marriage, for an example, that's further back in time than childhood. And issues there, chances are those issues are bouncing off of something clear back in childhood. That's why although the issues in marriage may have been standalone, difficult by themselves, chances are they were more exaggerated because they bounced off of something before.
I was very aware of that. My husband was very much like my mother. Yeah.
Okay.
He treated me as my mother did. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Anything else you want to go over?
Well, I'm sure I'll think of a million things as soon as I don't talk to you anymore.
Well, give me an email. Give me an email. Okay.
Okay. I will do that. Yeah.
All right. Big gratitude to you, Bonnie, for sharing your story. I'm sure it's going to be helpful to a lot of people. Okay.
I hope so. I really hope so. And thank you so much. I feel hopeful again. Really hopeful. Thank you.
All right. Good. Yeah. Thanks. All right. Next time.
Okay.